Well, let's dive in. So I think, so this is, I guess, our first week back after we were off last week because John and I were up at WasmCon in Seattle, and we had a really good conference there, really good set of meetings with people, and great seeing everything that's going on in that ecosystem. I think there's a lot of exciting activity there. I think for some Golem users, the WebAssembly itself may not be that significant of, the problem you're really wanting to solve is durable computing versus WebAssembly. But there is some very cool stuff that WebAssembly lets you do beyond just how it powers Golem it does help you kind of have these different components that are each sandboxed in potentially even in different languages and be able to plug them together. So it kind of lets you have a more polyglot composition of your programs without kind of having to go to the level of everything being kind of a gRPC call. But now we are back, and I think I had two things I wanted to share with you today. So first, I wanted to go over some of the changes that we've come out with since the last time we talked. We've kind of every month we're trying to have a new release and have some new features for folks. So I want to go over those, and then I want to do a little bit of a example of using Go, just because that's another big programming language. My Go skills are probably worse than my Python skills, so I think we'll probably focus more on just how we get Go working with Golem versus doing a lot with Go, because then I'm just really going to embarrass myself. But those are kind of the two main goals for today. And then if anyone has questions, feel free to jump in. They can be either on Golem or if there's other stuff that people want to talk about it today or in the future and something else or in the open source ecosystem with Zia or anything else, feel free to reach out about that stuff and we can hit on that as well. Okay, so let me start and let me just navigate to the right web page here, and then I'll do a screen share. Okay, so the first thing that I want to just bring to everyone's attention is this new stuff that came out in the beginning of September. And I think there are two main categories of things here. So the first that is really cool is we have a new version of our CLI. And it's now completely open source and it's based in Rust, so it's faster for you. But let me go to the Golem Cloud GitHub. So as a reminder, this is the home for everything open source Golem related, and we've been trying to push more and more stuff here. So we've got like this Golem wit, which is the specification for everything you can interact with from Golem. And a lot of that will be done in your native language, so you won't have to. But if you look at this, you see you've got kind of all the like basic stuff that's provided around like HTTP, clocks, and stuff like this. Generally, you won't have to use this yourself because it'll come in your language. But you've also got here the public version of like any Golem specific functionality. So we have this functionality here for promises. But the other thing you'll notice here is we have this Golem CLI. And so this is, if you use a previous CLI, you might have noticed that it was not quite as snappy as we'd like it to be. And obviously part of that is it needs to make network calls and stuff needs to happen on the server and come back. But a good amount of that was actually just it took a while with the previous CLI app was Scala based. And it took a while with that to kind of start up the JVM and do all this stuff. And probably wasn't the best language to do a CLI in, but sometimes you start with what you know. So this one is written in Rust. Like I said, it's open source. So if you have issues with it, you can open issues, or you can even open pull requests, which would be fantastic. Right now, the best way to get it is to just follow these instructions here, which is basically if you don't already have Cargo, which is the build tool for Rust, just do this to get Cargo, and then it's really simple. It's just Cargo install Golem CLI. In the future, this is also going to be coming to different package management solutions. So you'll be able to do brew install Golem CLI or whatever you use for your own system. But it takes a little bit of time just to get that set up for all the different package managers for different operating systems. So this is just will always work for you, whatever you're doing. So I've already done this, but maybe I can just show you this for a sec. Let's see. I'll just create a new terminal here. Let me bigger. So I think this will just tell me I've already got this, but I'm going to install Golem CLI. Already installed, and then it's very nice. You don't even have to do any sim linking or anything. It's just there for you wherever you are. And I can do Golem CLI help. I can do basically all the commands I was doing before. So if you're not already using this version of the CLI and doing stuff with the CLI, go and check it out. Maybe I'll just well, after we get done here, I'll post a link to that. But you can also find it from the Golem homepage. So that's one thing that's super cool. Second change that you may have missed if you look at this is there's some different terminology here. So instead of before we used component to refer to the template of your program that you could use to create different workers from. And now that's just a template. And before we used instance to refer to a particular worker that's running, now we just use worker here. So it's a little bit less WebAssembly specific, a little bit more hopefully general and accessible. And if you go back to these release notes that are on the web page down here, it's got all the details on this for you, right? So instance goes to worker, component goes to template, and then we previously were using templates for those examples you could download. Now those are examples. So I think pretty straightforward, and we basically updated this everywhere on the website and all the documentation. So if you're coming to it now and you never knew the old ones, then it's perfect for you. You never even need to think about the old ones. But if you have been playing with Golem for a little while and you're like, hey, why do things look a little bit different? That's why things look a little bit different there. So hopefully we won't have more renamings like this, but I think one of the things we're trying to learn, just like we did with the open source work, is kind of what the best way is to talk about and communicate this stuff. And I think this is definitely more accessible than this was. So that's kind of the first, like a second. So we had new CLI, talked about that. We had new names, talked about that. And then the third thing, which is probably less fun, but is necessary, is we're still in the situation where the tooling around WebAssembly is evolving very rapidly. And if you've played with Golem, you've probably noticed some of that. We tell you, well, you have to use a particular commit hash, and it's not even use a particular version, you use a particular commit hash. That's something that we think is going to get better by the end of the year. Big picture, Golem uses something called Preview 2, which supports the component model, which basically lets us have these different modules. And that's in the development process, that's targeted to be finished by the end of this year. And then that'll be like a stable base that we can work from for roughly the next year. And then Preview 3 be out at the end of that 2024. And that would kind of hopefully be the final version there. But the idea is kind of for that year, we'd just be able to stick with this one thing and not have to kind of do any upgrades. But until then, we are in this process where we are having to upgrade this stuff. And there are some changes that go along with it, unfortunately. And probably changes for the better. It makes sense to make those changes, but also definitely annoying for us to kind of have to just change our code to go along with them. And so you can see this kind of lays out what you need to do and describe some of these changes. And maybe I'll go through these first, and then I'll actually open up the auction application that we worked on, and we can look at just implementing those changes. And it's pretty straightforward. I mean, it's kind of annoying just once of one more thing to do, but it's not hard. And so for Rust in particular, we need to use a new version of cargo component. So we just run this cargo component install. And then in our cargo file, instead of using wit bindgen, we use cargo component bindings. And then we use just a slightly different syntax to generate all the bindings. And then we have this slightly different way of doing things of now we always create this struct called component, and then we create an impl called guest for the component. And then we also have a new version of our fork of request that just has all the right dependencies. And then there are a couple of other just version updates here of tooling. So let me show you a little bit of what that looks like, and then we can dive into playing with Go. So for that, let me go to GitHub here. And let's see, let me go to my own GitHub. And then let's see, okay, so yeah, these are the changes that I made. So let's maybe go through these and just show you what this looks like. So we said we needed to change that wit bindgen to the cargo component bindings. So that's pretty easy. That's just kind of a copy and paste here. Here, instead of doing the bindings export that we used to do, now we do the cargo component bindings generate. So I think it's just a different word for the same thing. And then here we replace auction info with component, and then we replace API with guest. So these are just basically slightly different words for the same thing. And then I think the only other changes I made here was I just updated this to all of our latest naming conventions. And we also versioned the API here. So if you are using the REST API, now there's just a version number here as well. So that's really all the changes. So again, it's not, it's nothing that's really hard to do, but it is just one more thing that I want to make sure that everyone is kind of aware of. So you don't get surprised by that if you're seeing that. Okay. Any questions on that before we switch over to Go here? Okay. Well, great. So let's then go back to the Learn page here. And I think Daniel particularly has done a nice job on this stuff of kind of walking through this. So Go is definitely not my typical programming language, but is a very widely used programming language. And in particular, the version of Go that we use is this thing called TinyGo. There's actually been a good amount of progress on support for just normal Go with WebAssembly. That's one of the things that came up at the conference we went to. So I think they now support Preview 1. They're working on supporting Preview 2. So we're not quite ready for normal Go, but that's probably in the near future. But right now we can use TinyGo. So the first thing is just installing it, which I think I've already done, but I'll just kind of go through for all of us here. So we need to actually have TinyGo. So we'll grab this. Oops. Okay, and then we'll grab this. Yep, I've already got it installed. So don't need anything else I need to do here. And then we're going to do a similar thing as we did before, where we can use the examples as a nice way to get ourselves started here. So let's do Golem CLI, and I believe the syntax is list examples. There we go. And so just like other languages, we can see all the ones we have available in Rust, or excuse me, in Go. Rust on my mind. And so you can see we got two examples two examples we can work off of in Go. We've got an actor full and an actor minimal. So I think since we're just getting started here, I'll do the actor minimal. So this, I'll just got to remember this name is Go actor minimal. So then I can do Golem CLI, and then I can do new, and then I need an argument of the template name. And we said that was Go actor minimal. And then I just need to specify the name of my example. And I think I'll just try to be consistent with the rest of this example here. So I'll call this and go underscore example. Oops, let's see, I think I messed something up. Let's see. Oh, okay, so I think I had this, yeah, so the example, the name of the example is example. And then the name of the template I want to create is TinyGo example. This is why it's nice to not only have a CLI interface, but that will be coming soon. All right, so we see we get the same thing that we did when we did like our Rust and Python examples of it's both created this thing for us, and it's also given us a link to some documentation about it, and even really given us a summary of what's in the documentation here. So now let me actually, let me just go to the, oops. Where else? Hold on 1 sec, let me just get to the terminal. Let me just do this on my desktop so it's a little bit more organized here. Okay, there we go. All right, so now let me hide all this stuff. And so now you can see here, I've got this TinyGo example. It's got everything I need here. So let me open this up. Let's take a look at it. All right, can everyone see that okay? Let's make sure. Yeah, okay. And I'm just gonna check into the chat here. All right. Okay. So you can see we got kind of the so we still got our WIP file here. And you can see it looks the same as all of our other WIP files. So we have our interface where we've got, so right, this is just like a gRPC file. These are essentially the ways we can interact with this thing. So this is basically just going to be like a counter worker that is just going to let us like add to a counter, and then we can get the current value of the counter. And then we're going to export that. And then we have this main.go file. And you can see that all these languages have a little bit of kind of different strengths and weaknesses. So I think we saw like Rust was really nice in some ways. I think the ability to find those traits to go from and into things was really nice. But remember there, if we wanted to represent some concept of like a global state, it was like a little bit awkward to do so. And we had some code that we put in there to make it easier to do, but you kind of needed to use that code. Versus here, Go is a little bit more free form, you could say. And so it's very easy if we're just going to have this global variable we define here of the counter. And then we just define two functions. And we're just using this TinyGo example implementation. And so add is just going to add the value of this thing, and then get is going to return this thing. So let's now go back to the documentation. Let's look at how we can actually build a WebAssembly program from this. So we can skip a little bit of this because we've got our own. So the next step is generating bindings with wit bindgen. Okay, so let's try doing this thing. First, let me go into here. Okay, so this has generated these bindings for us. And then one thing that's just a little bit, there's a little bit more work we need to do here, because we need to first create a normal WASM module, and then we need to convert it to a Preview2 module. So there's just a couple more steps here we need to do, but unfortunately, these are all just kind of copy paste things. If you even, we create some step that just does them all one after the other. But let's just go through these. So we're going to compile this thing to a WebAssembly module. And so now we should have this thing main.wasm. Let's take a look at this. There it is, created right now, main.wasm. Okay, and then we need to embed our wit interface definition. And then we can use this WASM tools to turn this into an actual WebAssembly component. And now we should have this template.wasm thing right there. That's ready to get uploaded. So now we can go to our Golem CLI. So we could do Golem CLI, and then I could do template add, and then we're going to need a name for this template. So maybe we're going to call this just counter. Seems like kind of what it is. And then we just provide the location for it. So I think since I'm in this folder, it's just template.wasm. Let's try uploading that. And there we go. And so we see that we've got these two methods. So we've got an add method that takes a number and doesn't return anything. And then we've got the get method that doesn't require anything and gives us back a number. So at this point, this template, it's just the same situation we were in with our Python code, where we may have started out as Go or Python, but at this point, other than maybe the size of the template, it doesn't matter which one we started with. This is just now a program that lives in Golem and can be interacted with through these methods. And so now we can actually try playing with this a little bit if we want to. So let me create one of these things. So I'll do Golem CLI worker add. And notice here how we're using our new terminology, right? So the template was the template for a counter. If it's not a particular counter, but we can use it to create a bunch of different counters. You could also think of it as, if you come from like object-oriented programming, of like, this is like a class, this is an instance of the class, but here we call it, this is a template, and this is one of those workers that's created based on that template. So I'll do Golem CLI worker add, and then we're going to give the name of the template, which we said was going to be counter, and then we're going to need to give the name of the worker, which maybe we'll just call counter1. And so now we've created a worker based on this counter. We've got the name of it. If it mattered, this tells us which template version it's based on, but here we know we created the template for the first time here. So this is the first template. And then we are good to go. So let's try, and this one will require slightly more typing. So we'll do Golem CLI worker, and then I believe it's invoke. And then we'll do a template name equals counter, and worker name is going to be counter1, and then the function is going to be, here's where this is helpful. So I'll just grab this. The function is going to be add, and then I think it's params. Maybe it's parameters. Sometimes I'm slightly off on these. But this will be, I think it needs to be like this. And let's do 42. Let's see if I got that right. Nope, not quite. Let's see. Oh, I think I just messed up because this needs two dashes in front of it. Oh, yeah, I think this does need to be parameters. Okay. So now we've called this thing. And so then I should be able to do, let's change this to get. I won't need any parameters here. And then I'll just want to do invoke and await. And there we go. So I added 42, I got back 42. Let's maybe try adding 42 again. Let's get it. And we've created a counter. So we definitely is not the most sophisticated program in Go, but I think you can see here how then just kind of following a couple of just steps here that are pretty easy to just automate. We were able to use Go in our program just like we've used any of our other languages. So it's really nice to be able to work in the programming language that you want to work in, and also to the extent you want to have very polyglot types of programs where each of your worker templates could be in a different programming language that fits either what you want to do, or maybe you have different teams, and one team is a Go team, and the team is a Rust team, and they can each create their own templates and workers, and those workers can communicate with each other seamlessly. So it's really nice that way. All right, let me check on questions here. You are a quiet bunch today. Does anyone have any questions or anything else they'd like to cover here? All right. Well, I think that's what I had for you. Oh, I think that's what I had for you today. Just, I guess, relatively straightforward stuff, but I wanted to cover, I think, some of the big programming languages, and also make sure that everyone's up to speed on the latest changes we've been making. I think oh, I see Pavel raise his hand. Yeah, Pavel, what's your question? Or I mean, feel free to type in the Discord, or if you want to, I can let you talk here, whatever you want to do. Let me allow you to talk.
Hello.
All right, Pavel. Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, just a quick question. Speaking about the comparison across languages, is there a faster language? Is there a slower language? Like, have you ever tried to compare the performance of Python implementation of auction versus a Rust versus Go? Like internally? That's
So
the question.
yeah. So there are two So one is there's definitely a difference. And I think you can see the difference in two areas. I think one, you can see it in like the speed of the program, and the other is you can see it in the size of the program. I think particularly if you go back to our last session where we did Python, one of the things that was very noticeable is the Python programs are a lot larger because the Python ones in particular kind of build in like a C compile do that, and there is a speed difference as well. So I would not think of kind of compiling WebAssembly as like a panacea that's just going to make your performance trade-offs go away, right? I think independent of Golem, you'd probably think of like, you know, Python's a very easy language. Probably code just written in Python is not going to be the fastest code. Rust has some kind of complexities around its garbage collector, but code written in Rust is typically very fast. It has a much lower memory footprint. You know, you can kind of say like probably Scala is like, you know, you can write fast Scala code, but not as fast as Rust code if like you really care about that. So I think those trade-offs are still going to exist. I think there's some efforts to optimize some of these things, but I would kind of expect that the trends you see in relative language performance in general are probably going to be reflected in the performance of your language once you compile it to WebAssembly. And I think you're actually seeing some languages kind of try to differentiate themselves on how well they can compile to WebAssembly. I mean, I think Rust is already kind of there, but there are some more like startup type languages that I've seen that one of the things that they're kind of advertising is, hey, our code does produce very small and very fast WebAssembly code. So that's maybe something to look out for in the future. But right now, I would kind of say use the same logic that you would in your normal development, right? So if you normally are in Python and you say, I like Python and I'm not doing anything that's like that critical, then that still probably applies. And if there's something where you're saying, oh, maybe I shouldn't do that because I really, really need to be fast, then I would look for something like Rust here as well. Hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you for your response.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, does anyone else have any questions? That was a really good one. Thank you. Okay, so I think we'll definitely have some sessions over the next couple of weeks. We may do some more on Golem. We may do some on like other open source stuff. But I think we're going to have our next kind of big milestone is, I think it's October 6th, that Friday. We're going to have an event where we're going to kind of unveil the stuff we've been working on for the month of September. And I think we've got some really exciting stuff that will make it a lot easier to work with our program. So I don't just have to use CLI, and make it a lot easier to build full stack applications with Golem. So that's coming down the pike, and really excited to share that with you. But that's still a couple weeks away. But please jump in with anything you'd like to see. If there are other languages you'd be interested in, we can do a session on those. If we want to have kind of like an architecture session on like how we would like build or approach a certain thing, we could look at that. And again, we also have kind of, obviously I a bunch of the other people who are involved also contribute to various open source projects around the Zio ecosystem. So if there's interest, we can definitely do stuff around that. And I have there are a couple of new features that I'll probably show people there at some point. But yeah, that's I think what we got today. So thank you so much for joining, everyone, and have a great weekend.